In this short video, we'll be talking about how you can find literature related to the research problem that you've identified in your classroom. As you learned about in the last video or the last segment of this course, whenever you begin a research problem, or excuse me, whenever you begin an action research project, you begin by identifying a problem that you're actually facing. A challenge or an issue doesn't necessarily have to be framed as a problem, as Dr. Schimler pointed out. Once you've identified what it is you want to study in your classroom, then you should conduct a systematic literature review to help you figure out what people have already learned about that problem. In short, there's no reason to reinvent the wheel if someone else has already solved this problem in a circumstance that's very similar to your own. Reading about how other people have worked on this problem or attempted to solve this problem can also help you as you actually design your research study and decide what kinds of interventions you'll introduce in your class and how you'll frame your research hypothesis, which you'll be learning about more with Dr. Schimler in the next section of the course. So we're going to talk about two great search resources, ERIC, the Education Resources Information Center, and Google Scholar. Probably some of you used these in the past in your teacher prep program or in graduate courses you've taken before, so this might be a refresher for you. If it is, fantastic. If not, then if you have any questions, if there's something that I don't cover, please let me know. I'll also be appending to this course a separate introduction to ERIC that actually comes from ERIC. It's a webinar that has a little history about ERIC and explains in greater detail how to use it to its fullest extent. It's about 50 minutes long, and again is a YouTube link that is safe for you to click on and watch, and comes from the Institute of Education Sciences, which is the part of the United States Department of Education, which manages ERIC. Okay, so I'm gonna look at my screen and look away from the camera a little bit, so pardon me if I'm not looking right at you. Let's start by talking a little bit about some basic search protocols. One thing that I find that many people don't understand super well when they first start to use online databases is the logic that helps us link together search terms and how that can be helpful, particularly as we narrow down a pretty big topic. So I'll include this link as well, plus everything else that I use in this video. But this is a super clear and brief introduction to Boolean operators. So Boolean operators are words or phrases or symbols that we can use to connect particular search terms to help us search more efficiently. So you're probably familiar with the most common ones, and or not. And you can see here that when we're using these as a Boolean operator, they're included in all caps. So, for example, and is the most common Boolean operator, and lets us narrow a search so that it includes all of the different search terms that you've included. So here they've given us an example using a Venn diagram, and this is a really great visual to help us understand what the and operator does. So if I am a scientist and I'm looking for studies that have to do with cloning, ethics, and humans, then I can use these search terms with the operator and between them, just as they've done here. The results of my search then will all be in this center part of the diagram. I won't get articles that are just about cloning, just about ethics, or just about humans. In many databases, the and is implied. So for instance, when you Google something, the and is implied. But that's not true in all databases. So particularly when you're conducting a systematic review of the literature for a project like this, it's best to err on the side of caution and use the Boolean search operators. Or broadens that search rather than narrows a search. So using the same example here, let's say I want to look at studies that are about cloning, genetics, or reproduction. So not the overlap of those three, but any studies related to all of those. Here, they've again used a really fantastic Venn diagram to show what results would be encompassed by this search. And you can see the complete circle area for each of the three circles is included. The last of the big three Boolean operators is the search term not. So this will exclude the search term that comes immediately after it. So for instance, their example is cloning not sheep. So if I want to know or want to read studies that have to do with cloning, but I don't want to read studies about cloning sheep, I want to read about cloning more at the edges of things, then I could use that Boolean operator. Another thing that you want to recall, or that you want to be aware of whenever you're using searches, is that order is important. So you want to use a logical order. If your words are sort of in a nonsense order, then your search results won't be as good. Also, you can use parentheses to help you sort of make compound sentences of your search terms. So they have some examples here. I might want to look at articles that have to do with ethics and, so that's and here, and then cloning or reproductive techniques in parentheses. I can also use the asterisk here to help me get all the different variations of this word that without having to actually type all of those variations or even know all of those variations. So if I have ethic asterisk or moral asterisk, then I'll also get ethical, ethics, ethically, anything that has ethic as the root word or moral as the root word. So let's take a look at Eric, and we can put some of this new knowledge about Boolean operators to use. Eric, as I said, is the Education Resources Information Center. It's an online digital library of ed research and other information. Eric is managed by the Institute of Education, which is an arm of the U.S. Department of Education. The mission of Eric is to provide a comprehensive but easy to use internet-based bibliography of ed research. So here you'll find citations and sometimes full text of articles from academic journals, but also from white papers or what's called gray literature. Gray literature are materials that are produced by organizations outside of a traditional academic publishing avenue, but are still well regarded, have valuable information for us. So this might include something like annual reports from different government agencies or nonprofit organizations, think tanks. So not necessarily a published article, but still research that is reliable for the most part. Government documents also fall under this umbrella of gray literature, and you can find those here. And many of those are public. Okay, so Eric has a couple of things that can help us. First, they have this basic search, and you can use this just like you use Google. Again, I recommend using your Boolean operators to help, not just to make sure that you're getting all the articles that you want, but also to narrow your search sometimes whenever you're working on a topic that can be pretty big. So, for instance, maybe I want to look at other action research. so that I can see what others have done in their real classrooms, especially if I'm thinking about what kinds of interventions I might use and how I might design my study. Maybe I'm interested in inquiry-based learning. Now, I know that lots of inquiry-based learning happens in science classrooms, and much of the literature related to inquiry-based learning is focused on science instruction. But maybe I'm a social studies teacher, so after I read a few articles about inquiry-based learning in science, I really want to look at something other than science. This is where I might deploy the Boolean search operator not. So I have action research and inquiry-based learning, not science. As you can see, now I have a results list that is markedly smaller than that's markedly smaller than it would be if I just looked for action research, inquiry-based learning. If I just look for those, I get 14,493 results. But by specifically excluding science, I've narrowed that down quite a bit. Once you have conducted a search, Eric has some limiters that can also be super helpful. So here along the left side of the screen are different limiters or ways to, again, narrow down your search. Maybe I only want to look at more recent research. Maybe I read a lot about this when I completed my teacher preparation program. So I'm just going to look at publications from the last 10 years. So I just click on that link and that's narrowed down, again, my results. I can scroll down and you can see there are different categories here. So descriptor, source, author, publication type, education level. Maybe I'm only interested in looking at articles that have to do with secondary students. So I click secondary, and again, I've really narrowed my results. So now I only have 71 results, and this is a much more manageable number. If I decide, oh, whoops, I clicked the wrong limiter, I can simply remove it by clicking on the X at the top. Maybe I didn't mean secondary. Maybe I meant to click elementary education just below it. So you can see for each result, you can click on the title. It will show you the author, where the article is from, whether or not it's peer-reviewed is noted here, and whether you can get the full text. For many, many resources in ERIC, the full text is available. This will also direct you to the place where you can access the text if ERIC doesn't actually house the full text. And as we'll talk about with Google Scholar as well, what you can access may be different depending on whether you're looking for literature at home versus at your school, and depending on what your school's library system has subscribed to. If you find that are unavailable to you, but you see the title and the abstract and you think, oh, I really need to read this, this could have some valuable information for me, then I recommend that you contact your school librarian if you have one, your local librarian, and the library at the college or university that's nearest you to help you get access to that article. Libraries have some subscriptions to academic periodicals and other kinds of academic literature that are pretty pricey for individuals to get on their own. Now, this first article in our results list, Inquiry-Based Learning and Its Possibilities for Primary Schools with Fewer Digital Resources, a Qualitative Study, is available as a full text here. This is from the journal Pedagogical Research. It was published in 2018, and I can download this PDF and save it to read digitally, or I can print this so that I have a hard copy to read and annotate. Okay. The other thing about ERIC that I find especially helpful, I'm just going to go back to here, is the ERIC Thesaurus. So ERIC tags all of its articles with a range of predetermined descriptors, terms or phrases that help us find things more easily. So over the main search, instead of being in collection, I can click on Thesaurus here, and then I can browse the Thesaurus. So you can see there are some big categories listed here. There are also categories listed underneath each letter of the alphabet. This is especially helpful if you don't exactly know what search term that you need to use. So if I go to A, for instance, everything is listed alphabetically here. I can scroll down. And I can see that action research is a term in the ERIC Thesaurus. Once I have this, then I know that using action research will be helpful in my search, and I can see related terms. So it might be helpful for me to also look for teacher researchers or community action or participatory research. The related terms are helpful in thinking about how best to search for what you need. The other thing to consider when you're searching in ERIC is if you are looking for something very specific, you can click on the advanced search tips, and this can show you how that you can really find a single article super quickly. Okay. X out of that. The other search engine that I think is most helpful for scholars is Google Scholar. So Google Scholar is a little different from regular Google. It only looks at indexed scholarly literature. And again, like ERIC, Google Scholar's definition of literature is pretty broad and includes things like government reports, court documents when those are available, and even things like patents. So it's relatively broad. If you were doing legal research, Google Scholar is also helpful. And again, and the address is scholar.google.com. Again, I'll put a link to that in the presentation here. Again, you can use the Boolean operators to help you with your search, just to narrow and make sure that you're doing as much as you can to get all of the literature. So let's do that same search. So we want action research and inquiry-based learning, but not science. Okay. So I have a lot of results here, 58,800. And you can include other kinds of limiters here to help you narrow down that search. I think Google Scholar is particularly helpful because it's really easy to see what you can actually access over here on the right. So for instance, can inquiry and reflection be contagious? Science teachers, students in action research. Hey, science wasn't supposed to be in there. I'll have to explore that a little more. But what I like here again is that I can see immediately that this is available to me as a PDF that I can save or I can print. And some of these are going you back to ERIC, and that's okay. Okay, so in the next video, we're going to talk about organizing what you have found, and then strategically and efficiently reading a traditional academic article. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to email me. I'm also going to be including the link to a much longer introduction to Eric, which you are also welcome to watch if you've never ever worked with Eric. Thank you.